Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. I am Lucifer. Nice to meet you. Anyway, great show tonight. We've got our discussion on Paraguay and disinformation and all that fun stuff. Fake news, propaganda, whatever you call it. So we'll be talking about that. It is our Halloween episode, so I am dressed up. I don't normally sound like this, but do you think their voice is sexy? I think so.
Oh, there we go. All right, we're back. Thanks for joining us. Joining us, as always, from Volcan, AJ, or Spock, live long and prosper, Nanu Nanu. And from Dallas, Ken Hitchcock.
I will clog your blue line.
Like he did his own arteries. And it's fitting because Dan's wearing the Stars jersey. I am wearing my Buffalo Sabres jersey. I'm all in tonight, so let me turn around and try not to hit the mic.
Nice. Miroslav Satan.
Yes, former Edmonton Oiler, former Buffalo Sabre, former New York Islander and Boston Bruin, Miroslav Shatan. I believe Shatan was on the cup-winning team for Boston.
The 2004 one, you think? Or
no, 2000 was it 10?
2006? 2004 side. I don't know. Boston won so many sports championships while I lived there.
No, and those were
not 1 cent.
Yeah. So don't ever move back, Dan.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, since I moved here, DC has won one championship. So the Nats.
Well, didn't the were you here when the Caps won the cup?
That was right before, I think.
Oh wow. Okay.
When did they win?
2019. Yeah, it was the year before the pandemic.
Okay, well, then maybe I was here then when they won.
Yeah, that was a crazy. So, no, that might have been earlier. That might have been 20.
I think it's earlier because 2019 is the year the Nats win the World Series also.
Yeah, but that was a good year for DC. Of course, Satan has a rhinestone trident pitchfork. Because why wouldn't Satan be bougie?
Let's point out that the Bible describes Lucifer as the most beautiful of all angels.
I am,
and so, it's one of the sort of the fascinating dichotomies. And I confess, Christians, I don't know a lot about your books, but that part I think comes from Ezekiel when talking about being cast out of heaven because of his pride over his great beauty. So it's a fascinating thing. I'm glad you are truly representing the most beautiful of angels cast out of heaven.
I'm telling you. That's not me. Anyway, so tonight let's talk about what's going on in your neck of the woods. AJ, what's going on?
Oh, let's see. The best news out of Tennessee in months and months. Gabrielle Hanson lost her election in Franklin. She was running for mayor. Now, this is the white supremacist, MAGA crazy bitch that John Oliver covered on his show. So she lost. Like, yay. I mean, some other Republican won, but yay, not her. So, yay, Tennessee.
Well, I do worry because the lesser known candidate wins, and sometimes when you get those polarized races, and nobody really focused on maybe how batshit crazy the other guy was. So
he was the previous mayor.
Yeah, I don't know that he could be crazier than Gabrielle Hanson, but
I don't know anyone could.
Yeah.
I mean, she stole a picture of like random people, like a random table of women, and posted it and said, my supporters and yada yada yada. And none of these women knew her. She didn't know a single one of those women. and like, Phil Williams, he's News Channel 5 down here. Phil Williams is, as John Oliver called him, the nosiest bitch in Nashville. And he uncovered all of this stuff with Gabrielle Hanson. One of her clients is a Nazi, and then she had actual, like, self-proclaimed Nazis come and stand with her for protection.
Yeah, she called for them to help her.
And then she said, now, we're not associated. And so they went on their social medias and were like, fucking bitch. Like, I got the receipts. So,
But
like, every turn, she was proved to be a liar. It was just insane to watch.
well, like when we saw with the LNC stuff that got exposed, never put anything in writing you don't want exposed, because there's no guarantee once it's out there in writing in the digital space that it's not going to get
Mhm.
exposed. Eventually, there's a chance it's going to get exposed.
I'll go a step beyond that. Never say anything about somebody that you don't want someday repeated to their face
True.
verbatim by
Yeah.
somebody.
I mean, there's a level of plausible deniability that you could have with hearsay, but once you write it down and it's there, then you're kind of screwed. Now, if it's
I mean,
recorded,
there's deniability about written stuff too. I
yeah,
didn't
you can
write
say
that.
it's faked and all that stuff.
Exactly. I can produce all sorts of fake documents about you, Lucifer. Um, in fact, I think even Jesus said, blessed are ye when men will curse you and say all manner of false things against you, all manner of accusations against you falsely in my name. Right?
I don't
You
know.
guys should be
I
impressed
don't
with the
know.
New Testament quoting. Um,
I'm the
But-
Some
devil.
weird human shit. I'm not doing that.
but the thing about it is that in all those cases, the only thing that you have to fall back upon is your character. The
Yes.
people who know who you are, and that's the thing. So you're right. Don't write anything down that you don't ever want to come back against you. Don't say anything that you don't want repeated. So and so said this, but remember that in all sorts of things, people will say things about you falsely, which I'm kind of setting you up for a segue here, Dave. People will say things about you falsely. And then the only way you have to counter that false narrative is by who you actually have been all your life.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to fake news just yet. We've got something to discuss.
No, but you could tease the next thing. You
Tease.
could tease it. Right.
I'm going to tease. No.
Nice.
But yeah, we'll be talking about fake
You'll
news here in a
tempt
minute.
us.
Good. So wait, you're going to do that? I'm also going to tease us. Sorry.
Wow.
It's a Dan joke.
It is a Dan joke. Yep,
You should
talking
also
about
be-
disinformation, fake news, propaganda, whatever you want to call it. It comes in many forms and flavors, and we'll talk about one, how what it looks like, and two, how to combat it. How you can prepare for. We're going into 2024. I mean, I get the political ads for Virginia now because of their House and Senate races.
So
And they're
expensive.
awful, and they're awful. And
Both
I will
sides.
always complain about people who are buying media for a state House and state Senate race. When you're pay, I mean, the pay for that job is like 20 grand a year, 25 grand a year. Like,
And millions of dollars are being spent on these campaigns.
yes, absolutely. So, yeah. So as we go into 2024, it's going to be absolutely brutal. Plus, the personalities are going to be involved in 2024. So, kind of a defense guide on how to look at news and um, how to keep yourself sane going into the election, which is going to be a tall order. But first, we are going. Oh, Mike Johnson. Yeah, we'll talk about the new Speaker of the House. The fuck it, let's give it to him guy. I don't think they even vetted this whole thing, but yeah, this is another one. Like I said with the other race, sometimes you focus so much on the other personalities, you don't know who you're electing, and this is exactly that case with Mike Johnson. But
I'm afraid they do, though.
which is up.
Well, let's do
Pirate
Paraguay.
Captain Drew Bingaman, how you doing, sir? Good to see you. All right, and good to see Janice and Craig as well. Thank you for joining us, and all those people joining us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, and all the other places you can watch us from. Give us a like, a share, subscribe, smash that like button. What it does is help get us more in front of more eyes, boost the algorithm, as they say, as the kids say. So, but we're going to talk about. We've been teasing this for a while. The country of Paraguay. This is our first dive into the continent of South America. I gotta read my notes, and I'm trying to do this in dark. So, all right. So, Paraguay. Let me blow this up a little bit. Yeah, Paraguay. They're in the middle of South America, the heart of South America. It was gained its independence in 1811, largely ruled by military dictators until 1870. That was ended by the disastrous War of the Triple Alliance, where they fought Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, and lost 2/3 of its adult male population in those 6 years. From there, Paraguay tried just normal dictators, and that ended in 1989 with Alfredo Stroessner's removal. Free and fair elections have been the norm since. It is slightly smaller than California, and 61st largest country in the world, landlocked, bordered by Argentina, Bolivia, and Brazil. Let's see. Large rivers leads it to being a large exporter of hydroelectric power. So that's one of its largest exports. It has a population of 7.4 million, which is 104th in the world. Ethnic groups, largely 95% of them are mestizo, which is a mix between Spanish and native populations. Let's see. The main languages are Spanish and Guarani, which is a local language. And 89% are Roman Catholic. They are a republic, and with a president and bicameral legislature. The president is Santiago Peña, who was just elected in August to a 5-year term. They only get one 5-year term, which is probably why Paraguay seems to be doing pretty good right now. So senators are elected on a closed list proportional representation so it's a single nationwide electoral list. So depending on how many percent the party gets, how many that determines the number of senators elected. The Chamber of Deputies has 80 seats from 18 multi-member constituencies. So their country is broken up into what are called departments. And one of them is named after President Rutherford B. Hayes. We'll get into that in a minute. The largest party is the Colorado Party, which is the party of the president and in control of both houses. They are a center-right, economically liberal party. There is the Great Renewal National Alliance, that is a social liberalism, social democracy, and democratic socialism party. The last election in April for the House and Senate, Colorado won majorities in both houses. Bare majority in the Senate was 23 of 46 senators and 48 of 80 deputies. No other party has more than 6 deputies in the lower house. So they do have a pretty good control of things in the country. Let's see. The cool thing about Paraguay, and we'll remove this, is that Paraguay has one of the lowest tax rates in the Central America. It's a large place where a lot of expats are starting to go now because of its tax rate. It's a maximum tax rate of 10%, and most everything is deductible. So food, clothing, everything, the normal things that you would buy are deductible off your taxes. So a lot of people will go to Paraguay and reduce their tax bill. A lot of businesses are starting to go down there to reduce their tax bill, which is beneficial for Paraguay, because you're getting local people hired into these positions. Not so much good for America, but that's the price for having a high tax system in the United States. So Paraguay is trying to get more people to come into the country. Most of the people live on the east side of the country, in kind of more of the forested, kind of rainforested areas. The west side of the country is largely deserted plains. About 2% of the population live in the western half of the country. So they're trying to get more people into the country, more investment, more dollars, and all that stuff. So it's being called a big time plan B for a lot of expats if you're looking for going out that way. What is that, Dan? Oh, Dan, you're on mute.
You're mute.
We've lost
So
you.
this is sorry, I have my house picked out in Paraguay.
Oh,
This is, I believe,
this is like a drug lord compound, dude.
well, because I mean, how am I going to support my lifestyle?
Do you need a
But
nurse?
the only thing that I don't like about it, yes, I will definitely need a nurse.
Awesome.
Is
Yeah,
that it
comic
is,
sidekick.
yes, I do need an evil sidekick who would be willing to wear a mask.
Yeah,
And I see you
absolutely.
are. So I
Absolutely.
didn't share that in the chat.
But I will share this because
Yeah.
this is pretty swanky.
Yeah.
This is our
But it's
plan B.
what it shows you is that on the high end, right? So there it is. It's that house with the red roof.
Fascinating.
25 bedrooms. And if you scroll down a little bit, Dave, you'll see a picture on the right-hand side of the screen that shows the house and the lake. Yeah. Enlarge that one.
I think that's not a lake. I think that's
It's a river. It's the Paraguay River, but
yeah,
What?
yeah.
right. See, that would be a nice place to
How much
live.
is it?
It's cheap. $2.4 million US.
That's not. I mean,
It's not
that's a drug lord compound
for
but
25 bedrooms. Here's the thing about it, right? What I don't like about it is that you have neighbors, because I hate all those other people.
Yeah, if you're running a cocaine operation, you can't have neighbors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is pretty good privacy at that point in time. And if you want to get more privacy, you can buy lots of land further inland. However, as you point out, the whole place is landlocked. So
But there is flooding, so you got to watch out with the rivers there. There does tend to be flooding there. I think the hydroelectric dams have helped somewhat, but in the spring season they do have flooding. So it's pretty close, but it does look like it's on a hill over the river rather than right on the river. So
yeah, no, I think you'd be fine there.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at the picture on the left. But thank you for letting everybody see what my new home will look like.
We'll know where you
Yay.
live. We know where you live now.
Exactly. Well, you guys are all welcome.
Awesome.
And
Yay.
yo hablo poquito español.
I
That's the
took
limit.
Spanish in high school and I learned less. I think I knew less going out of that class than I did going into it. So
Donde
Living in-
es la biblioteca? However,
¿Dónde
I will
está
teach you.
el baño?
I will teach you my one little Spanish trick, which is if you want to know what something is, point at it and spell the word socks. So let's have AJ try it.
Spell socks.
Yep.
SOK
No.
SCKS.
Yep, that's exactly it. SOCKS.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is that?
Saying, what is this thing?
Yep.
I know more sign language than I do Spanish. So, yeah.
What is that?
This means bathroom in
Oh,
sign
okay.
language.
Very nice.
This means
I actually did have a
help.
I did have a so I ordered Grubhub when I was in the office on Wednesday, and my driver was deaf, and so I googled how to say thank you in sign language. Yeah. Although the article I read said, be careful, make sure it hits the front of your chin and go out, because if you go under your chin, that is
something else. Yeah.
Then Italians get pissed off at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And just this is thank you, and then this is you're welcome.
Oh, okay. Very nice. We're learning stuff here, people.
Yeah, we're learning stuff, even just about Paraguay.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I will say with Paraguay, everything I've read is that it is kind of like the next coming, like what Costa Rica was probably 20 years ago, where a lot of expats wanted to move there. Paraguay is going to be kind of like that. The other countries are too much instability in Argentina, too much instability in Brazil, but Paraguay has been, at least since 1989,
fairly stable, and it doesn't have anything that any of the major powers want. Right? So the major powers
landlocked.
Exactly. They want a lot of shit out of Brazil. They want a lot of stuff out of Argentina, Chile.
But I think
not so much out of Bolivia, but Paraguay will be left alone. It's a nice independent nation, hard to get to. So it's not like, it's going to be involved in a lot of world political problems or anything like that. It's not a bad place to go. Having looked into it as well for the article, I thought it wouldn't be a bad place.
No, a lot of people are moving there and enjoying it. Low humidity versus, say, doing any of the Central American countries. Getting all 4 seasons because it's higher elevation and right now they are transitioning into summer versus us transitioning into winter. So
Mm.
it's their springtime in South America. So that is Paraguay. Any questions about Paraguay
From the audience? Yeah. See, look, Janice has got it. SOC KS.
KSSO? Yeah, KSSOs too.
Yep. One of the interesting things for me also about Paraguay is, I eat almost everything except for seafood. So a landlocked country has all sorts of advantages for me. I don't have to make excuses or push things around the plate or something like that.
See, that would be that for me. I would miss the seafood, at least the fresh seafood. I mean,
So what's
if you're in
interesting about
Asuncion, I think you can get anything you want, but
they do have freshwater fish. So there is some fish, but it's not like,
yeah. But I'm a seafood person. I'm not really
right,
big on
exactly.
freshwater fish.
The you
That's the only like protein that I eat. So
the only protein you eat is fish.
for the most, I mean, like beans and
Paraguay's
stuff like
out for you.
that. But
The only animal protein you eat.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Paraguay's out for you.
Well, no, I mean,
Well, they do have a lot of rice and beans, but
no rice.
you don't eat rice either.
No, not very much. No.
Interesting.
Bothers
My
the
stomach is absolutely destroyed.
I am sorry to hear that because I know for a lot of people who don't eat meat, combining rice and beans, because rice and beans combine to the perfect digestible protein, is a critical part of their food. What about eggs? Do you eat eggs?
Nope.
Well, I have no advice for you.
I do tuna and salmon and
Yeah.
the impossible chicken patties, faux
Oh,
chicken.
right. Well, so that's interesting. Have you ever looked at Soylent? The
green.
I have
so,
to.
just Soylent, but
Is it
yes,
just the soy?
it's soy and lentil.
See, soy I have to be careful with because of the autoimmune thing. So
Interesting.
the autoimmune protocol diet is fucking terrible. I wouldn't
Wow.
recommend it for anybody. It's terrible, but it does
1
keep me from
star.
having
Not
flare-ups.
recommend. I'm
Do
sorry
not
to hear that.
recommend.
But
No, it is what it is.
you make a good point for a lot of other people to be grateful for the things that you have in your life that work well, because you never know until you have to do without.
I miss bacon so much. You have no idea. And like my kids still eat meat. So like I still smell like pork chops and bacon and Collins chicken and biscuits every morning. Yeah. It's just like
Gotcha.
I
all
used to
right.
see the ads for Soylent on Facebook all the time, and every time I saw them, I put the
It's
Charlton
people.
Heston yelling, "It's people!" on
Right.
the stretcher as he's being led out.
Right. I mean, and that's fair. They want that joke.
Yeah,
But it is a really fascinating thing because I know a few people who what the way they live their lives are alien to me. I mean, I don't want to judge anybody. So, this is how you live your life. If this is how you live your life, totally fine. But these people are like hyper productive. Like they don't like to waste time. They don't like to be recreational, anything with their lives. And so they don't like to eat because eating takes too long. So for them, Soylent is awesome, right? They just have a big shake that they make in the morning and then they just pour out of it. And that's all they eat over the course of the day. And that's what Soylent, for people who aren't familiar with it, find at Soylent.com. That's what it's designed to do. Maybe Soylent, you would like to sponsor our show.
yeah,
That would be awesome.
yeah. Because I'll make that joke every damn time.
Send me free stuff to try.
Yeah, they should send AJ some free stuff. I'm going to
Exactly.
tag them. I'm going to tag them in the YouTube video.
There you
And
go.
everybody else should also tag them.
But I mean, yeah,
Uh,
I get it. I mean, that's not my lifestyle. I mean, you can look at me and tell me that
yeah, and I enjoy eating.
food is good for me, or not good for me, but at least I enjoy it. I get lots of joy out of eating food. So
Now, I will
um,
say, one of the fascinating things about food too, though, is how much of what we eat and how much you eat and all that stuff is shaped by the producers of food who use media to manipulate you and disinformation.
This is true.
Food pyramid,
oh
corn
yeah, the food
subsidies.
pyramid. Yeah. Well, that really is government. You know, the manufacturers influence the government. I mean, everybody who ever watched The West Wing knows the famous episodes about the food pyramid and
Yep.
you know how industries will buy their way into a more favorable position on the food period for that food pyramid because it is make or break. It is, you know, like the government giving you blessing and probably in a more government trusting time, that's a
Yep.
lot more important. That you know, if
What's
the
interesting
government goes,
about it is, but the things that people do that cause misinformation that we don't realize is disinformation. So one of the things that's AJ can talk about, I think, to a great deal. Uh, I'm pretty sure you're not old enough to remember this, AJ, but it used to be a time that pharmaceutical salespeople would come to doctors' offices and hospitals and have donuts and bagels and cream
I still
cheese.
do that.
Do they still do that? All right.
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, they're not supposed to do that anymore. However,
The Viagra guy brought chocolate,
that wow,
just so you know.
because
was it tinged with Viagra? It's like edible
Well, I
Viagra
hope not.
falling
but but it's a great example because that's one of those things where people don't even realize, or at least they often don't realize that they're being manipulated to having a favorable thought about somebody else, which may subconsciously influence them. And that's the way disinformation works.
Yeah.
Disinformation isn't always just somebody coming out and lying to you and saying, look, the earth is flat and they don't want you to know about it. Disinformation is the very subtle thing where they come to you and they say, I'm not anti Semitic. But if you look at Hollywood and the producers of the films, and that's it. There's a little bit of truth there, a little bit of disinformation. And secretly, we actually do run Hollywood. I'm just going to give it out right here. But but that's one of those things. And that level of disinformation carries over in so much of our lives. Obviously, the government's involved in it. I just had, honestly, a really sad experience with a friend of mine who this guy has made poor decisions in his life in the past, but he's been a nice guy. He tried to really get his shit together. When Massachusetts legalized cannabis, he wanted to open up a dispensary. He couldn't really raise the money. He asked me to help him out a little bit. And we started having some conversations. And it just became clear to me that he didn't know enough to open a business. He didn't understand things. And a lot of that was disinformation. And it came up again over the last 2 days because we've been having this huge argument because he really believes that inflation is caused by corporations colluding together and raising prices. And that's not what causes inflation. And I tried to argue with him about it. And I said, what, I'm like, what do you think the government does to fight inflation? The government raises interest rates because interest rates are the price of money, blah, 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 blah. I don't need to explain that to this audience, but I couldn't get through to him because he had had so much disinformation from left-wing politics that he couldn't understand basic economics. That's my piece. I'll shut up for a little while.
No, and absolutely we do see a lot of misinformation when it comes to media, when it comes to in fact, let me share. This is kind of famous. A lot of people know and seen this before. but it's the media bias chart. And people can say that it's biased as well, depending on who the person is making the chart. This is from Ad Fontes Media. Let me get back here so I can see it. All right, I'm going to hide the chat for a moment so we can blow it up a little bit. But this is like an all-inclusive. It doesn't. Where's my chat button? There we go. This is websites, podcasts, the bigger podcasts. So, you're not going to see the deep dive on here somewhere, but it rates from reliability and then a partisan score on the top end of the quadrant, and then the reliability. What's most concerning about this whole chart, as we look at the kind of the complete thing, is that nobody gets up into like the highest one, which was CBS News, which is kind of surprising, although it skews left, which I think a lot of people would somewhat agree with. Nobody eclipses 50% on the reliability scale. We lost you again, Dan.
Yep, sorry. That's an important thing to think about because, right, who's probably the most trusted journalist in the history of America? I think most people would say it's Walter Cronkite.
Yep.
And his protege is Dan Rather. And Dan Rather told an enormous and blatant lie on national television when they accused George Bush of not having done his National Guard, Air National Guard duty. And for people who don't know the story, they said, we've got this piece of paper that proves that he wasn't there. But when somebody looked at the piece of paper, they said, listen, that is printed in a font that did not exist before the computer age. So for damn sure, it's not a record of George Bush Jr.'s. No, it's not his military record.
Yeah. I mean, that's the amazing thing, is that people can. I think back in the day when you only had 3 news outlets, you could probably get away with something like that.
Right.
But now, I mean, everyone can be a citizen journalist. I mean, we try and do it here on this show, talking about the news of the day. Ours is more opinion than news. I will say that right now. But we'll report on the news, and we give our opinion on it. Yeah, most of these, CBS is up here by itself. PBS NewsHour, I thought was, I was surprised it ranked that low. Usually it's a little bit higher, and this is done every year. So maybe they've kind of sunk into more opinion.
I think that
generating.
what's happened is, a lot of groups which have felt like they need to be impartial in the past have now said, well, things are so bad that we're going to give ourselves an excuse to not be impartial anymore.
I think a lot of news organizations, especially after the election of Donald Trump, felt that they didn't do enough to prevent the election of Donald Trump. Although they were probably a lot more. They were the reason why Donald Trump got elected, and the fact that they gave him
Because
such a
they gave
platform
him so much.
for 2 years before the election, thinking that he's going to tank the Republican Party, and then all of a sudden he wins on the election.
Well, I'll give you a lot of that, but they also really did block a lot of political speech that was opposite of their mainstream views. If you weren't Donald Trump, but you were a candidate on the right, it was very difficult to get any legitimate traction, especially in blue states. And the national media, with the exception of Fox, skews. Now, I will argue, though, to a certain extent, that I actually want bias in my news, because
I just want to know. You say
exactly
are
because bias is what makes you search for those stories that the other side isn't even looking for, and so that's important. I need, and this is going to tie a little bit into our new speaker. One of the interesting things about our new speaker, and it's sort of coming out right now, is that he has an adopted black son that
doesn't show off at all.
didn't show off at all, doesn't bring it up. And he was very frank in talking with the media about it, saying, my son is an adult. We adopted him later in his life. And when we talked about my political career, he asked that he just never be involved and not be mentioned. And so I would ask people to respect that. By and large, a lot of people have. But in far left circles, you hear people
Oh, yeah.
say, oh, that's his illegitimate son from his black mistress, blah, 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 blah. All that
Yeah.
shit, which is exactly the sort of thing that makes people distrust, and worry about the misinformation that's out there. Because those people have, as far as I know, no proof of whether or not that's true. And if it is true, there are plenty of other things to be unhappy with this man about, other than the fact that he may or may not have had an affair, and he may or may not have a black son that then he adopted to make legal in his family. Who cares about that shit? And the sad thing is, who cares about that shit? The same people who watch TMZ and American Idol and all the other crap, the people who want to be entertained.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with you, Janice. I used to watch David Brinkley. I never watched Chet Huntley, but David Brinkley anchored
Oh, yeah.
NBC for a long time. And then actually, David Brinkley was on ABC until, like 10 years ago. That guy
Yeah.
was amazingly well preserved. That's probably the golden era for media coverage. But what happened was, people realized, first of all, so there's another thing I want to put in there. And Dave, maybe you can share this as a link. I'll send it around the chat. There is an amazing book on this called Bias by Bernard Goldberg, a guy who worked at CBS. And he is a Democrat, but he talked about the fact that people who worked at CBS didn't even realize how biased they were, because it was a bubble, a self-affirming bubble, where people would say things and not realize that, oh, you know what? We always refer to the Democratic candidates. This is one of the things that came up as President so-and-so, President so-and-so, but we refer to the Republican president as Mr. So-and-so. We never use the word president when we talk about him. Just simple things like that.
Yeah.
And, Republicans do the same thing. Fox obviously is, incredibly, terribly biased. But where it gets really crazy is the disinformation that is so bad now. And this is probably one of the worst things that's out there, that it kills people. So there's a great show that I would also recommend to liberty lovers called Bullshit with Penn and Teller. And they did an episode on GMO foods. And you can dislike GMO foods. I don't have a problem with that. But the fact of the matter is that, boy, you have to be privileged as shit to dislike GMO foods. And one of the things that happened, and they sort of show the things that people say in America to fight against GMO foods. They say, oh, there's no testing, or, there are no government regulations. Actually, that's not true. There are incredibly strong government regulations. It's among the most tested things by the federal government, really strict standards. However, in the middle of a famine in Uganda, America offered to send GMO corn that was modified, that would be resistant to the bugs that were causing the famine in Uganda. But anti-GMO activists got to the president and said, listen, once you plant that corn, there's no going back. It's going to ruin your country for forever, blah, blah, blah. So the president turned it down, causing an estimated 100,000 deaths.
Yeah.
Because
to me, I think a lot of the anti-GMO stuff is, like, you could draw a line between anti-GMO and anti-vax. Like,
Yeah.
I think,
yeah, I mean,
anti-GMO is more of a, and it's not completely left-wing thing, but it's more of a left-wing thing, and anti-vax is more of a right-wing thing, and they do meet in the middle. There's a Venn diagram there,
right,
but
yeah,
there is anti-scientism.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's the point I was going for as well, is that it's anti-science more than anything else. And here's the thing. there are a lot
Yes,
of
there
people
are.
who feel like the world is getting out of control because there is science. Dude, I'm with you, Drew.
Yes, absolutely true.
Monsanto created these seeds called the suicide seeds. Because, so first of all, let's talk about this a little bit. For people who aren't familiar with the Roundup Ready program,
Ugh.
Roundup is this really amazing weed killer.
It is. It's also cancer causing, but in
A
some circles.
little cancer's okay. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a little cancer among friends.
Exactly. But so Roundup is unbelievably effective at killing weeds of a certain type. And actually, what it is, it kills plants with a certain type of leaf. Monsanto, who makes Roundup, genetically developed these plants that aren't affected by Roundup. So now anybody who's maintained a garden knows what a pain in the ass weeding is. Now you don't have to do that because you plant your Monsanto seeds and you spray the field with Roundup, and all the non-Monsanto stuff, all the weeds die. And it actually works pretty well. There's a little cancer. There's some research issues, stuff like that. But there's certainly a lot of commercial farms that do that. And if it were incredibly deadly, you'd see a lot of deaths instead of just a little. People should look where their food comes
Well,
from, see
it's
all that stuff.
the workers in the field. Those are the people that suffer.
Right. They're the ones who suffer the most.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing. These seeds, right? Monsanto makes all these seeds that they're making a lot of money selling. What they don't want to do is have you buy it once and then never have to buy seeds again, because all the food that you grow, you collect the seeds from that and you use that to plant next year. So they made this food with what they call a suicide seed. So you plant it once and it produces food, but it's sterile. None of the things that it produces can produce any more food. So you could imagine a
Yeah.
dystopian thought process where you think, well, what would happen if that genetic trait got out into the world and suddenly all of the food that we eat became sterile and it didn't produce food anymore?
And it made
And
us sterile and things like that. Yeah.
exactly. But what's interesting about that is, okay, you know what? I'll give you those thoughts, but it's not factual. Okay, it's not factual, but nobody can prove to me that that the Roundup based farming society, which produces a lot of food in this country, is so incredibly dangerous that everybody who eats it dies. There's information and disinformation on the other side. I don't think it's as safe as Monsanto says either. I do believe that there are a lot of deaths, especially from workers using it in the field, stuff like that. But this level of disinformation is everywhere. And it's funny because every one of us on here, deals with it in our professional lives. We talked about AJ and, what happens at hospitals, and even small clinics. And what's interesting about it is, so in Massachusetts, they passed a law to make it incredibly illegal for pharmaceutical representatives to talk to doctors. So then what they tried to do to get around that was they would have sponsor these conferences in the doctor's field, and they wouldn't even try to sell their product, just sponsored by Pfizer or whatever. And this conference is in Hawaii, and we'll give you full room and board while you're there, and you have to attend 1 2-hour lecture a day, stuff like that. So they made that illegal as well in Massachusetts. So then what do? They started going after the nurses, and they started, giving all these amazing benefits to nurses, because anybody who knows how hospitals really work know that the nurses are in charge, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
The doctors know a lot of stuff. They're really important to the healthcare procedure and stuff like that. But there are very few doctors who understand patient care really well. It's the nurses who understand that best. So all the pharmaceutical companies started lobbying the nurses for a long time. And again, it's not even that it's disinformation, right? Because if I'm telling you that this blood pressure medicine is new and amazing, knowing about it helps you. because there's so many new meds that are out there all the time. It's almost impossible for healthcare providers to keep up with all the new pharmaceuticals. So, if you give me a bagel and cream cheese and a little pamphlet that I can read about this new med, and I read it and I'm like, you know what, this might help one of my patients. That doesn't even seem like disinformation. It's just bias, but that's the most subtle form of disinformation there is. And all that disinformation is a pattern to set up the big lie, right? And that's where we start getting problems. So right now, we're talking about the big lie in a context. The big lie that they're talking about is that the election was stolen, and Democrats are fighting against this idea that the election was stolen, which is interesting because most Republicans don't feel that the election was stolen,
No,
but there's many who do.
there are. I've talked to a few that are convinced that, I'll ask for specific examples of what happened, and they'll cite like how Pennsylvania changed its election law to allow late votes to come in, and
Fulton County, there was all these
county.
fake ballots. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
like there was the box that was under the table, which wasn't a box that was under the table, but
Right. These
um,
two workers who, mother and daughter, and all that other crap.
yeah,
And then the GPS records show all this other stuff.
yeah.
Well, what's funny is,
Dinesh D'Souza's
right,
craptastic.
all those things that they're quoting are actually disinformation that they don't know is true, but they're repeating.
Yep.
And Larry Sharp, who's a friend of the show, used to say, he still says it, there was no one more passionate than the converted. And so these people who are spreading this disinformation they don't even do it intentionally, but their message gets to people who, when they hear this stuff and it sounds plausible and sounds true, they're like, oh my God, how did I not know that? I need to tell everybody else. And so many of the people who are participating in this cycle of disinformation are actually good people who want to save you. And they want to know why you've been so brainwashed against all this other stuff.
Exactly. So looking at this chart, and I'm going to say it's not like you're going to ignore everything, any news story that comes from any news organization on this chart.
Yeah.
For the most part, the lower down on the chart, the
Can you put that full screen? Get us off the screen?
I don't know if I can get us off the screen.
I think there is one that's just that.
I put us on the side.
All right, that's
Yeah.
better. It's 16 by 9. Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Yeah, this is great.
It's not great. I mean, because there are a lot of things, especially I've got it on the website, articles one. So here's the thing to do when you get an article and it's a fantastical, and especially what we're dealing with the war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, the war or in any fight in the United States when it comes to politics is to understand where your news is coming from, where that article is coming from, what the inherent bias of the presenter is, and then you can make your decisions on whether you find it believable. For the most part, a lot of people like to they find something that jives with their particular worldview and not give it any vetting. I say vet all your news before you start before you put a story on the news. I mean, like a local news story, that's one thing, but like a national news story where Democrats want to kill all dogs and Republicans want to hide nuclear waste under your bed.
Yeah, if Democrats win the election, people will be able to marry their house pets, and if Republicans win the election, they're bringing back slavery in the South.
Yeah. I mean, the more fantastical and the more egregious the headline, and we can get into the idea of clickbait.
Clickbait versus critical thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. There are so many times where, as we've gone into this cycle of fake news that, you see a headline, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this.
Right.
And you post the article online without even clicking the article. You're just, the headline is egregious enough. Then you click the headline and you read the article, and there really isn't anything that, that article doesn't say what that headline says.
Mhm.
And then you lose credibility amongst your friends, and you kind of look like you've been duped. And if you're smart, you're pulling that post down. Um, some people double down on that shit. So
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing about it is that sometimes people want to believe that
yeah,
there's some sense to some things, and it makes sense. I will
yeah.
say, just looking at this chart, you look at most reliable, least reliable. I am not surprised to see Cosmo in the low reliability scale because I have
But
picked up.
those quizzes though, those are highly reliable.
Well, actually, that was the point I was going to say because I remember seeing a what he's thinking about in bed, and I read the article, and at no point in time was sandwiches mentioned.
I know.
So
Sandwiches and sports, like that's duh.
exactly, right, exactly. So
Yeah, I
I'm not
was
going to get too
puzzled
deep into that.
by the inclusion of Cosmo, 'cause I don't really see them as, I mean, yes, they do
Who's
cover
getting
some
news from
women's,
Cosmo?
so well, they do cover some women's issues, but, not really, like,
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I
don't
bet their abortion coverage and birth control
sure, I'm
tips
sure
have
that was that
blown
was
up.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, but, I will say that I do think that there probably is a little bit of bias in the people that make this chart, in that there's some low information, low accuracy stuff on the left side that I think is way higher than it should be. Like Occupy Democrats is awful.
Yeah.
They just spew just dumb stuff.
Yeah.
They should probably be below the lowest line. This should look like more of a true arch
Well,
than
I was going to
of an
say
arc to the left.
it is interesting though how much it is sort of a the more balanced you are, the more truthful you are,
Yeah,
right? And it's so crazy. Like, I mean, I see Mother Jones over there on the left hand side. I like to read Mother Jones. They've got some
yeah,
good coverage of some cool stuff. And back in the day, they were as anti-government as anybody.
yeah.
But that's
It's
the other thing about it because so we talk about all this disinformation. How do we fight it, Dave?
so again, don't post the first headline you see. Look at the article, make sure it backs up with that, and to the extent where the information presented is so fantastical, and I will say that we've been presented with all kinds of fantastical news that ends up being true.
Right.
So it kind of lends you to making that snap decision to post that article. But the more fantastical the information, get it from a second source, and maybe a source that's on the opposite side of the spectrum, because a lot of times like my favorite news sources are international. So BBC is like my go-to. The Economist is one of my go-tos. Um, Deutsche Welle is one of my go-tos, and but what I do with those websites is I don't trust their take on their own governments, because one, BBC is an arm of their own government.
Right.
Deutsche Welle is to an extent as well. So, but like American news coverage is they're excellent, because they do kind of hack through some of the BS. Now I know that they're both left of center, so I know that their perspective um, is more towards the left side, and they're going to cover that in a more favorable finding. But uh, they'll cover bad news on Joe Biden just as much as they will on the Republicans, and that's kind of refreshing in a sense, because if you're watching CNN, I CNN sometimes can be okay, but a lot of times CNN is really just, it doesn't matter what the news of the day is, that they're going to have to hit on Donald Trump, and
Right.
they're going to complain about Donald Trump, and it's like, well, yeah, there was an earthquake in Peru. I'd like to kind of get some news on that. And there's this, that, and the other going on in the world, or even in the United States, that they're completely ignoring because Donald Trump, kicked a dog today or something like that.
Right. And the other thing that bothers me is that there's a lot of times where there are people who are giving out facts, and part of the disinformation campaign is to discredit those people.
Yes.
And I'm going to give an example that I think is going to piss a lot of people off here. But if you haven't watched Rachel Maddow or read her book, you're missing out. That woman is super smart.
Oh yeah, she is.
And now, wrong. She's wrong on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I say that from my perspective. And it's important. Another thing that this is another important thing about disinformation is I can be very passionate and tell you something that I believe to be true, but it's true from my perspective. And I am who I am. I can't deny the fact that I grew up with tremendous privilege. My parents were married all my life. My dad always had a job. Not a lot of people get to grow up with all that stuff.
Yeah.
And when I talk about things I see in the world, I'm coming from that perspective, and I try to be aware of all the other stuff. But I can't compare my life to either of yours because you've had all these other different experiences about it. And so sometimes it's worth recognizing the fact, and I guess this is my thing about disinformation. You are always going to be vulnerable to disinformation and misinformation until you start getting to the point where you think, I might actually be wrong about this thing that I think. And I'm trying to think of like major places where I've changed my opinion. I really changed my opinion on the death penalty. When I was a kid, I did not understand same-sex adoption. I didn't get it. I thought, there are so many parents out there waiting for kids, because I didn't understand at the time that adoption is as much about the parents as it is about the children and the parents' experience of having a child,
Yeah.
as well as, the child having a loving home. Now that I understand it, of course, if you can get anybody to adopt a kid and give them a happy, healthy home, I don't care what they're like. Even if they were a Sabres fan, I would be in favor of that.
No suffering. So I mean,
exactly. Right, exactly. They
probably have a
won't waste
drinking
their
problem at
time.
that point, but that's all right.
Exactly. So, I think one of the other things that we do to fight disinformation is to recognize it in ourselves and call it out when we see it. And I think all of us here have the ability to be very persuasive and sound like I know what I'm talking about. But honestly, I am as full of shit as any of you. And I believe so much of my own bullshit that the big challenge and revelation and work of my life, the thing that I'm trying to work on the most, is to ask myself, how much do I really know that to be true for the person that I'm talking to? Because just because this experience is true for me doesn't mean it's true for everybody else. I think about like the things, right? What's the thing that probably gives me greatest sadness in my personal life right now? And this is going to sound tremendously privileged again, but I'm really disappointed that in a year of really working on it, I lost no weight. I actually, I was down 10 pounds after 9 months, but now I'm back up to where I started again a year ago. And that sucks. So what does that mean in terms of my perception? I think, there's all this crap going on. I've been trained by media to eat food and all this other stuff. But I think, are you bringing us back to the audience?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get the Economist. Oops, scroll back out. So the Economist is media center.
Yeah, they're pretty
And
reliable.
they are pretty reliable. They're 45 on the reliability scale, which is up there. So I mean, again, read the article. Don't just go off of it. Post it if it agrees with your worldview. Get a second opinion.
And
Go to the left, go to the right, and see what it
I
says.
think you need to be able to argue the other side too.
Oh yeah.
Because if you can't argue the other side of a position that you want to talk about, you're very vulnerable to being recruited by somebody who can explain to you the other side in a way that you never thought about it before. But also, you're not familiar enough with the issue to talk about it. Nothing very interesting to me now to sort of see the people who are deep into misinformation about a lot of stuff that's happened. People who just don't know things. I talked about my friend who doesn't understand where inflation comes from. A lot of these world crises. There are so many people I meet who think that Ukraine started the war with Russia, which is insane. But that's disinformation. And really, we're talking about their state level disinformation that has a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah, that's another topic that we can go through is where it becomes state level, and you've got these media farms, these troll farms that are state sponsored. Oh, we lost Dan for a second. Dan, come back. Oh, we lost your mic.
I'm here. I just have to blow my nose, and I didn't think America wanted to watch that.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. All right, so I'll take that off the screen. But yeah, Russia has an extensive troll army that does nothing but post news, and it's from highly sketchy and questionable websites, and
well, they have a television. Let's talk about
RT. Yeah,
right. We have a friend who had a show. I don't know if you guys would call him a friend, but I would call Adam Kokesh a friend. We know each other pretty well. He's done some things that I don't agree with and stuff like that, but we're at least friendly. I guess I wouldn't call him a friend, but
yeah, his own issue.
We're friendly. We are cordial to each other. Adam had a show on RT.
Adam versus
they paid him. Adam versus the Man. They paid him a lot of money, and he did some really good stuff in there. He was famously arrested for dancing at the Jefferson Memorial because it was illegal to dance at the Jefferson Memorial for whatever reason. And the way they did it, they didn't want to disturb anybody. They didn't bring loud music. They brought, and this is going to sound strange, but they brought Walkman, which were portable music players that had two outlets. So the dancers could listen to the same music and dance together at the same time. This was a really good show, and it made some really important points. But the real point of it being on RT TV was to fan the flame of anti-government passion. And
absolutely.
Just so happens that corresponds with us. But also, interestingly enough, I'm in the last season of Homeland right now. And season 6, or maybe season 5, is all about a Russian state-sponsored disinformation campaign designed to make Americans not trust the president and to separate us from each other.
Yeah.
And you consider how, it wasn't that prescient because this was after the 2016 election. But boy, they had no idea what 2020 was going to look like.
But I think it was clear that Russia was active in 2016 and sending over news articles and things that got
James, I'm dressed up like Ken Hitchcock.
Yes.
And look at AJ's ears.
AJ's Spock. She's not wearing the red shirt. So we're not going to send her down to the planet.
No, but Spock wore a blue uniform. Yes. That's exactly right. Very well dedicated.
But yeah, it was clear that Russia was involved in 2016, and that was kind of where it started getting sideways. And Grandma and Grandpa were posting the articles of how Hillary Clinton was
Pizzagate.
Yeah, Pizzagate. Q was starting in that time.
And if you're not familiar with the story of Pizzagate, essentially the story was that there was a sex dungeon, a pedophiliac sex dungeon in the basement of a pizza store somewhere in Virginia.
No, it was in D.C.
Was it in D.C.?
It ended up getting shot up.
D.C. is part of Virginia.
No,
disinformation.
The Virginia part was given back to Virginia. So
exactly. So that's and it ended up causing all sorts of problems. Complete bullshit, right? Nobody actually did any of that stuff, but
I mean, the Hillary Clinton campaign did a lot of sleazy stuff. I mean, the
Sure.
emails that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks came out with were,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
the whole idea of where did they get them? Did they get them from the Russians who may have hacked into the DNC servers? That could be,
Yeah.
but it was still
Although,
the truth. I mean,
yeah,
that was still the truth, and there was the truth to me
exactly.
of all the stuff that happened during the 2016 campaign was far more damning than any of these weird conspiracy theories. But like you said, our brains look for meaning in
Right. Search for patterns.
when there is no verifiable fact. You're going to look for meaning, and you're going to search for patterns. You find those
Oh, yeah.
patterns when somebody points them out to you in a convenient news article. That really hits at your confirmation bias. Because if you're a Republican, even if you aren't totally keen on Donald Trump back in 2016, you were absolutely terrified of Hillary Clinton. So you were willing to believe
Exactly.
anything that happened.
Yep.
And then the idea that yes, U.S. media is awful. They're just CNN, MSNBC, Fox News can be jokes quite a bit, but there is a very large concerted effort from foreign governments to erode any trust in any story that comes out. I, that's why
Th-
people will say, Donald Trump's been convicted or been indicted on what 90 some odd counts, uh,
Yeah.
and people will respond, yeah, well, that's just fake news. That's the
Sure.
media is trying to
Sure.
manipulate us, and
Yeah. And I'll tell you what's interesting about it, though, is that the disinformation just runs nonstop. Like it's like shit through a shrimp, for want of a better explanation. There is sorry. I just think
that's
about how
good.
like
I
you
like that.
gotta take it out and devein it and all that stuff. And we even say that it's deveining, but think about um, you know about all these people who pled guilty in Georgia, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Sidney Powell. So let me ask you this question. Maybe you know the answer. Beelzebub might actually know, but did Sidney Powell plead guilty to a felony?
I don't think so. I thought they were all misdemeanors.
They are all misdemeanors. Now, did any of the Georgia people, were any of the Georgia people convicted of a felony?
Have they had convictions yet
They
You
will
being
not.
charged with?
or
So
indicted?
they were charged with, and they actually pled guilty. Two of the lawyers did. They pled guilty, but Georgia has this thing called the First Offender Act. So they will not actually be convicted of the felony, which means as lawyers, they're all going to get to keep practicing law, all this other
Terrifying.
stuff about it. And if you listen to people on the left side, they're like, "Oh, well, this is a slam dunk. This
Eventual
proves that,
conviction.
that
Yeah.
that exactly that Trump is guilty because all these people pled." But the fact of the matter is, they pled to nothing. They pled to these little insignificant things that, well, I think Sidney Powell is being fined $6,000. She has a $12 million budget for her "I'm a fake lawyer suing the government" organization.
Yeah.
Right? $6,000 is nothing. All these people pled guilty to
But
essentially nothing. Which, did they cut some deal that their testimony is going to be really important? Maybe. But nobody, there's a lot of disinformation from the left saying this is a slam dunk. It's definitely not a slam dunk. These people did not plead guilty to major crimes. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I certainly hope that Donald Trump gets indicted and goes to jail, and fails in his bid
reelected.
to become president again, but he'll get to be somebody's first lady. But I make that
So
joke too many times.
Janice mentions listening to Tucker Carlson. Take Tucker with a grain of salt. Tucker, yes, he has worked for various organizations, CNN, Fox News. Did get fired for essentially the Dominion scandal, where he really did spend a year after the election lying about the Dominion voting machines and things like that, and casting doubt on the election. and costing Fox News quite a bit of money. But
$750 million, I think.
yeah, just take as with a lot of these guys, especially on the lower rungs of the fact, or at least the media bias chart, uh, and with a lot of bad things, there's always an element of truth in what they're saying, but it is very obfuscated and very twisted to really hit their.
Search on YouTube for Jon Stewart and Tucker Carlson,
Oh my god!
because
Oh, it's beautiful.
yeah,
Beautiful.
Jon Stewart was on Crossfire in 2004, back at the height of the Daily Show, and this is when Tucker Carlson was still on CNN and did a show with that sort of
Big
punching
Crossfire.
bag,
Yeah, he
punching
was
bag
Crossfire.
Democrat. I can't remember what that guy's name is, but the fascinating thing about it is that in a conversation by somebody who would actually call him out, right? Tucker Carlson got his lunch eaten.
Yeah,
However, they say a broken clock is right twice a day. And if you're old like me, I will warn you that you can't just say that to somebody, because if
yeah.
that person is
Digital
a
clock
millennial,
is never right if it's broken.
exactly, a millennial doesn't understand how a broken clock can be right twice a day. They're like, if it's broken, how can I tell what time it is? So, but Tucker Carlson will occasionally make points about government overreach that are 100% accurate. He's right on the money, because that's his axe to grind. But he's
Yeah, I
also
mean, he points out where, from a right perspective, the government overreach. He'll cheerlead like a mofo for left, overreach towards the left side.
school choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, though, is that Tucker Carlson is the sort of guy who says, I'm really in favor of school choice. I want parents to have, the right to have their children educated as they want. And, there's a lot of controversial things being taught, like the 1619 Project, which says that the North won the Civil War, and that's not true. And that's where it goes. It's that he's really good up until the end, and then he gets in the crazy.
Yeah.
And so,
Like, that's the element of truth. Then he goes to the guano.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what's interesting about it. I don't have any desire to pursue far right crazy media people, because unfortunately I have a lot of people in my life who will tell me all that shit. But if you look at the far left crazy stuff, holy shit, is that way out there too. It's
Oh yeah.
unbelievable. And well, I think that in our group, people aren't really familiar with a lot of that stuff. But like, boy, you look at the squad, right? The really progressive members, Bernie Sanders, and I respect Bernie Sanders a great deal. But dude, that guy has got some crazy shit that he believes, and he puts out there like it's fact.
Yeah.
And then all of his disciples quote it like it's fact, but really it's disinformation.
Like, one of the things that was on that board was I mentioned it earlier, the Occupy Democrats.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it is every once in a while they hit, they'll post a meme that's funny. But a lot of their news is just confirmation bias. And just the worst thing that, the Republicans are the worst thing that ever happened. And, to an extent I can be down with that argument, but you got to give me facts.
Well, and
Where are they worse?
Another thing that they use on the far left that's crazy is this idea of intersectionality, which is that all the oppressed people in the world are united in their cause of being oppressed.
Yeah.
However, the example of this, and I don't want to drag too much politics into it, but recently there have been people going to pro-Palestine rallies in the United States and bringing pride flags to show people what actually happens if you bring a pride flag to a Palestinian thing. You get the shit beat out of you. All people who are oppressed are not allied together.
Yeah.
Okay. That's some of the biggest disinformation that's out there. And people buy into that stuff because they say, oh, I want to see this pattern and that there's one unifying thing. The fact of the matter is, I am an anti-government person, but I am not an anti-government person like David Duke is an anti-government person. I'm not an anti-government person like Lyndon LaRouche was an anti-government person. I'm an anti-government person because, I believe in the idea that we'll all do better if we have to work together. And government takes that away. Deliberately, government takes away from us the need to belong to each other because it does it to separate us. However, there are a lot of extremists out there who believe that they're anti-government people because they want the ability to build their own little homogeneous societies, and be small-minded bigots. And government stops them from doing that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
all
and
right.
and be careful, especially with these protests. If somebody was just bringing a pride flag to show what happens to pride people, in context, we may not see what maybe they egg the protesters on to get their ass kicked. I don't know. Again, I don't know. But I was on the radio this week, and they asked about protests on college campuses. Look, if people are protesting the treatment of Palestinians, that's one thing. If you're saying Hamas is good, okay, now you're in a dumb area. But
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's another thing that I do want to talk about briefly. This is sort of my pet peeve and a little bit off topic, but you see a lot of protests going on now. Just Stop Oil is the big one, where people are doing like crazy things, like chaining themselves to across the highway, stuff like
yeah,
that. And there's a lot of that confrontation going on right now. In fact, Tennessee just passed a law that if you strike somebody trying to drive past them and they're trying to block the road and they're not a law enforcement officer, you're not liable for the damage caused to them. I can't say that I'm unhappy about all of that stuff. I had thought I've been thinking about this, like what would I do if I came across a road blocked by Just Stop Oil? They're the ones doing it or whatever. And I needed to get through. I have a 5-gallon jug of gasoline in the back of my truck. I'm not going to light anybody on fire.
I was like, where are we going with this?
I'm not
Hey,
going to
that's
light
my
anybody on fire. However, I am going to pour gasoline over people and say, there's a shower right there. You can get out of the way and go shower yourself off. But, there's a real problem coming in how we do that. And, I say that I would do that. I haven't done it yet. So,
Yeah,
but
I don't know. I don't know how I would react to a stoppage. I mean, if it's just people across the street and I'm just going somewhere for shits and giggles, I mean that's one thing. If it's like an emergency, I'm trying to get somebody to the hospital, then
right.
I'm
Well,
contacting law enforcement and saying, "Hey, I've got somebody that needs
but
medical
that's
treatment."
still ours.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I look at what happened with the big one that we saw, right? I think we watched the video at the thing where the old people go.
Social Security.
No. Burning Man. At Burning
Oh,
Man, the right, those protesters tried to block the road there. In fact, they did block the road. But one of the things about it, again, this is sort of just crazy. But so, they're all sitting there, but it's in the desert,
yeah,
right? My intervention would be, fine, you want to sit here and cause problem? I am taking your hat. I am taking your water bottles, and you can do whatever the hell you want to do here in the desert. But I'm not going to support you to, at the end they had like 500 people
yeah.
blocked. It's
I don't know. I mean, I don't. I'm not a fan of that level of protest. I'm not gonna. I'm not. I outside of a dire emergency, I don't think I'm gonna hurt somebody to get around it. I
I
will
don't want to
contact.
hurt somebody, but
Yeah,
if you move to get in my way when I'm trying to drive around you,
yeah.
yeah, I mean it's that's the question is
And
that
minute 10 versus hour 5, there
Exactly.
may be a different reaction. I get that. I just don't know that I would go that far, but I haven't been confronted with that experience yet. So,
Right.
um, and this is Staten talking. I don't know if I'd do that.
Well, so it's interesting. I do want to talk about your state. One thing, actually, I don't know what the score of the game was, but did you know that Tyler Bagent, who is
Tyson Bagent, yeah, he's local guy
Tyson, he's the first NFL player ever from West Virginia, or first starting quarterback ever from West Virginia in the NFL.
from West Virginia.
From West
Yeah,
Virginia.
'cause
Yeah,
Geno Smith played for West Virginia, but I don't.
yeah, no, I remember that, but from West Virginia, West Virginia local.
That's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of football linkages to West Virginia. I mean, the Saban started out his coaching career in West Virginia at a small school. Um, but yeah, Tyson Bagent is actually a local kid.
To you,
Went to Shepherd University, which is like
yes,
not even 30 minutes from me, like 20 minutes from me. Um, Set all kinds of records in Division II, and his dad is a world champion arm wrestler. Like
yes,
I wish the Giants had drafted and signed Bagent because um,
because nobody did.
nobody did. Yeah,
He was
I mean,
undrafted.
he was undrafted. He was overlooked several times by West Virginia. People in the area were like, seriously, this
Right.
guy's setting records at D2. Let's get him at West Virginia.
Yeah,
Um,
right. We should say he is the all-time record holder in the NCAA for touchdowns thrown as a quarterback.
yeah, and
Right.
just an amazing arm, amazing story. I'm glad he's doing well for the Bears. I'm not a big Bears fan, but happy to support a local kid doing well. All right, let's see. Are y'all ready for Le Quiz?
I'm ready. Lay quiz.
Le Quiz. All right, the CNN News quiz from October 26, 2023, which was Thursday. So anything that happened after that, uh, like Matthew Perry passing away, sad news.
Very sad.
Richard Mall, Bull from Night Court, also passing away. Very sad.
Adam Johnson.
Adam Johnson, hockey
for the
player,
Yeah.
former Pittsburgh Penguin, getting cut across the throat during a game and died tragically.
What?
Oh yeah, don't go looking for the video. It's
No, there's no reason for that. But
yeah, it's not as gruesome as the Richard Zednick or Clinton Malarchuk
Right.
incident,
That's what's crazy about it.
but I think it was where he was cut on the neck. The Malarchuk and the Zednick were across the side of the neck.
Yeah.
and got the jugular.
Right.
And they were able to skate off the ice and get to a doctor quickly.
Right.
Adam Johnson caught one like right flush on the neck.
Yeah.
I don't know if the skate was pointed in or if it was, the blade went all the way across. He was able to get up, skate towards the bench, collapsed, had blood all down his front of his jersey, and eventually died. The problem was, whereas in American sports,
Exactly.
even at the high school level, you have
Doctor on.
defibrillators, you've got doctors on site, you've got an ambulance on site. They did that in this game in England. It took, I think it took like 25 to 30 minutes to get an ambulance to the arena.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
crazy.
he was done.
gosh.
Yeah,
And-
there's no way to save a guy like that.
It's interesting too. Like you talk about that in America, there's a lot I think that gets glossed over with who's the Buffalo Bills guy who his heart stopped.
Hamlin, Damar Hamlin.
Hamlin, right? Darren Hamlin. When his heart stopped, and I think we talked about this when it happened, but the trainers went out there and, ABC, right? Your assessment of the situation, airway, breathing, circulation. He's got no pulse. They start chest compressions.
Yep.
Right away. And they are going at it. But they're very highly trained and they know, right? They go out and they get a defibrillator, but you can't actually use a defibrillator on a stopped heart. I learned that from AJ. Because she's super smart.
Wicked smart.
But wicked smart, as we say in Massachusetts. But they're doing the chest compression. They finally get, a thready rhythm enough that the AED, they fire it up, starts the heart, stops again. They have to do CPR again. This cycle of going on. And CPR, if you've ever done it, CPR is physically exhausting.
Oh,
You
God.
can't do it for many minutes. And so they had this trained team of people, all of whom were able to sub in. They did the same thing, stuff like that. Amazing trainers at that level. Unfortunately for Adam Johnson, it's pretty clear that
Just didn't
they
have it. Yeah,
they
didn't have
weren't
the
ready for that.
resources. Yeah, and I'm aware of 3 incidents over the last 30 years. One in 1992, I want to say that was Clint Malarchuk in Buffalo, the goalie. The skate slashed his neck as a guy went by. Just started pouring blood out. It was that's an awful video to watch. Richard Zednick, again in Buffalo, different. Was for the
Right.
Florida Panthers. Guy kind of got hit and his leg went up and caught him in the neck. Again, slide of the neck, and it was you saw the blood shooting out as he was skating towards the bench, but he knew
Yeah,
immediately.
like
he was
it's
prone.
right.
Yeah.
Right. His jugular vein was severed.
Pulse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Just
yeah. And
amazing.
there's like this zigzag line of his pulse as he was skating out the ice. It was brutal.
But
But again, they had doctors there,
Yeah.
and the Malarchuk thing helped the Zednick thing because there was some experience, even though it was like almost 20 years apart. There was
Yeah.
experience with what happened and what to do. But
Right.
I just think that in this case there wasn't the
right.
sufficient
And I mean,
doctors. I'm sure they didn't have blood for transfusion there, which
yeah, I doubt that they had a high end. And the thing about it is too, just for people who don't know, hockey skates are sharpened unbelievably sharp.
yeah,
Okay, because the edge makes you be able to skate better.
in
The
turn,
difference between a
yeah,
sharp edge and a dull edge is a massive thing. So everybody's out there essentially skating on a knife,
Razor
a really
blades.
sharp knife.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and and they're sometimes sharpened between periods. So I
Yep.
mean, it was a very sad story.
Yeah.
But
On to the
hopefully,
news.
hopefully we won't see that much anymore. Let's see, on strike. So the United Auto Workers strike, some kind of storm,
Yep, and we know what that is.
and Alaska Airlines. So those are our context clues for the week. Let us start the quiz. Frantic manhunt, mid-air scare, crypto surge. What do you remember from the week that was? Question number 1. Hundreds of officers this week called to respond to 2 mass shootings in which state?
I
Wyoming,
know it.
Kentucky, Maine, or Mississippi? Yeah, sadly, we know this one.
Yeah.
Feel free to answer in the audience. Let us know what you think.
mm,
Kentucky, Wyoming, Maine, or Mississippi?
Everybody got it.
Yeah, Janice, Craig got it first.
Remember the Maine.
Sadly, that was story.
And they still don't know everything, but I did see that they had put out a warning about him a month beforehand.
Yeah, he
statewide.
had a bad he was a firearms instructor, had a bad mental break this summer.
Yep.
Was in treatment for like 2 weeks.
Yep.
In-person treatment. But yeah, it's just
Yeah.
an awful story all around. All right, question number 2. Which Republican was elected new House Speaker on Wednesday? Rep. Mike Johnson, Rep. Jim Jordan, Rep. Tom Emmer, and Rep. Byron Donald.
I think it was Michael Hunt. Sorry. I mean, it's almost the
Yelzy
same.
Bub.
Yeah. Janice has got it again.
Yes.
Yeah, this guy's
Yeah.
a piece of work.
He is. No bueno. Yeah, so while everyone was focused on Jungle Jim Jordan and how bad he was, and Republicans were predictably suffering the embarrassment of their previous choices and how badly they went. I will say one of my favorite memes of the week was the picture of the QAnon shaman with the caption saying, "This guy spent more time in the speaker's chair than Jim Jordan did."
mm.
Absolutely great. But yeah, we were so focused that a relative nobody amongst the reps, like, yeah, he'll do, and nobody vetted anything about this guy. So I had never heard of Representative Mike Johnson before that. He's got a rather ubiquitous name. So,
Yeah.
and he looks like Stephen Colbert, which is, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe Saturday Night Live brings Stephen Colbert to him on their show.
I will say one of the interesting things about him was that he carried a lot of water for Trump. He refused to certify the election.
Yep.
A bunch of stuff like that. But within I think 48 hours of taking the speaker's role, he said Joe Biden is the president of the United States and he won the fair election.
Yeah. But I will guarantee you this means we have a government shutdown November 17th.
I'm not terrible with that part of it.
Yeah, I am.
I know
Not even on a personal level. The law is now that no matter what and how long it goes,
still
that
get paid.
I'll end up getting paid. It is the absolute money waste that it ends up being.
Right. But what's interesting about it is that there's some disinformation there. The government doesn't actually shut down.
No, it doesn't shut down. But
And
it does shut down in sex, but it doesn't shut down the operations or the collection of money.
right. Well, exactly. And the collection of money is continuing. So they could pay for some things.
Although the problem is, at least from a VA perspective, is that it's supposed to shut down the same weekend we do our cost of living adjustment. So every year, based off
That's
of
some
the
bullshit.
consumer price index, we have to code our systems to be able to pay. We pay a month in arrears. So on 12/1, we do a payment with a new rate that's going to be 3.2% higher than what was last year. So yeah, cost of living adjustments may be impacted because we're just not able to put the code in because we rely on a lot of contractors to do that work, and as soon as that money's turned off, they get turned off as well. So that'll be an interesting impact moving down the line. So
Yeah, I think that it would be interesting to see the government make an effort to maintain minimal services while using the money that is coming in from receipts, because it's still generating. Obviously, I mean, if they take in, let's just roughly guess it here. I think $2.5 trillion in receipts last year. Okay.
They can take in money, but the problem is it's the same thing with it's the division of powers. The executive branch can't spend money.
No, but no, the House could though.
The House could authorize this stuff, but why do that and not pass a budget?
I'm just saying the idea that the government has to shut down.
Yeah, no, I get what
all
you're saying.
disinformation.
It's all stupid. I mean, it's just dumb theater.
It's all stupid. Yeah,
It is. It's all stupid, dumb theater for fundraising emails, essentially. All right, around what? Because when they pass that budget, they're going to say, "Oh, we're going to fix the deficit in 10 years." Well, less than a year from the time that it gets settled, we're having a new election. We're going to have a whole new class of congressmen. We're not going to pay attention to that budget.
But and they're not going to pass a budget. That's the thing about it. It's completely stupid.
CR. Yeah,
they'll pass a CR, right? But there's not. The Republicans can't get a budget past the Senate, and Joe Biden damn sure wouldn't sign it.
Yeah, and the Democrats can't get one past the House,
right?
Even though they're completely divided.
Well, the Democrats can't even create one because the bill has to originate in the House.
In the House, that's true. Yeah. All right. Question number 3? Around what percentage of Americans get their flu shot each year?
I got mine.
10%, 20%, 50%, or 80%?
I think 10%.
Yeah, it's either lower, and I don't think it's 80%.
Right. But let's ask AJ, who is our healthcare professional.
I wouldn't say it's 80. Maybe 20.
I want to
Just
go with
because
AJ's.
kids at school are offered.
I want to go with AJ's answer.
I don't know.
Audience.
I hate when y'all do that.
Greg also says 20.
Yeah. And Janice says 50. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that high.
Let's go to. We got 220s.
All right, 220s. It's close.
Let's see.
That's 40.
James says 50. Oh, it is.
Oh,
Was it? What was it?
We doubted
it is
Janice.
50.
Janice
Good
hit
job,
two
Janice.
Let's go
earlier.
with Janice.
Yep.
Oh,
I got mine. I got a 3-fer last week. I got flu, the new COVID, and my second shingles vax.
dang, man.
Mm.
Were you
You should-
down at all?
No, no problem. I had
Oh,
a
that's
little
good.
bit, a little upper arm pain, but
Oh, yeah, the
you know,
soreness is always.
exactly.
Yeah.
But Dave, you should get your shingles vax too.
I know. I was supposed to, and then my doctor forgot about it at my last appointment. So
You know, I
I might
brought
just
some.
go to Walmart and do it.
I got some extra ones. I can just come over and
You got to put them in my butt.
yeah. I mean, you could have it in your arm if you wanted to. Dave, don't make this like the thermometer.
Nice. All right. Question number 4. An off duty Alaska Airlines pilot has been accused of trying to shut off a plane's engines mid flight. What drug did he say he had consumed before the incident?
This is all
Marijuana edibles,
disinformation.
magic mushrooms, methamphetamine, or ketamine?
I know this.
Do you?
I have no
I
idea.
heard
What
this
the
story.
shit?
Well, let's see. I think it's the drug that you have probably. Well, maybe not.
I would say mushrooms,
I've
maybe.
told a lot of stories. Let's see if the audience gets a guess in before I spill the beans, or mushrooms, as the case may be. It's mushrooms, and
But, I mean, kind of makes
yeah.
sense to me.
But also he said he took it like 2 weeks ago. Now,
oh no, come on.
well, but so he wasn't claiming. I said
48
okay,
hours.
48 hours before, 2 days, 2 weeks,
Charged
whatever.
with 83 felony counts of attempted murder.
Wow, because he tried
Yeah.
to kill everybody on the plane.
Jeez.
Now, I mean, he's obviously going to claim temporary insanity, and you probably get that. But mushrooms don't affect you that long.
No.
So his claim is that he, sort of had a psychoactive incident that impacted him profoundly. I will say, my first trip on mushrooms is very much like that. A lot of sort of revelations and things that, inspired me to change, to become a little bit of less of an asshole.
Did you try and turn your engine off on the highway?
I didn't try to turn my engine off.
Turn it off, turn it back on.
What happened actually was we took them before going to see Eric Johnson in Austin. Those of you
Okay.
who know Eric Johnson, greatest guitar player in the world.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yep.
All right, question number 5. Which cryptocurrency saw a 20% jump over the past week? Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Ethereum, or Tether?
I'm surprised that I don't know this, but I would guess Bitcoin.
Yeah, because the market's tanking as well. So
Is the market tanking?
yeah, at least that's what that might be disinformation. That's what I read. So at least the headlines I've been seeing is that the market has been taking a beating lately. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, particularly, but I don't pay attention too much to that stuff. So
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Oh wait, that's one day. Let's see. Last month. Yeah. The NASDAQ is down like 600 points in the last month. So that's down. But see, this is right. So this is the fucking disinformation part of it.
Yeah.
What I say, it's down 600 points, but
that's how much of their percentage of it.
but I was going to say in 6 months, it's up from where it was 6 months ago. So I mean, it had a very meteoric rise through the end of the summer, and then it's had a bit of a drop. But anyway, as Janice says, Bitcoin.
Janice says Bitcoin. We're gonna have to trust Janice.
I agree. We owe Janice.
Yeah, we owe Janice. Hey, Bitcoin is surging again, topping $35,000 for the first time since May 2022, up 20% over the past week. So I guess coinciding with the market slide.
Yep.
All right. Question number 6. What is the name of the hurricane that slammed into Acapulco this past week? Henry, Otis, Jasper, or Peter?
Let's talk about rapid intensification. Are you familiar with this part of it?
No.
So this hurricane went from a category 1 to a category 5 in under 24 hours. And it caught all the meteorologists by surprise. It was right before it hit land. So you would call it a failure in diagnosis, not diagnosis, in whatever the fuck you would call weather prediction, meteorology.
Meteorology.
Yeah, except that, meteorology isn't actually, we know that this is going to happen because of these conditions and stuff like that. Meteorology is statistics. They say, you know what, we have a database of 10,000 days of weather, and when it looked like this before, this is what usually happened. And those models are broken in climate change. And so
Well,
for a while,
yeah,
there's
the
going to be
water down there, and especially in the Gulf too, on the Gulf side, is incredibly
much
warm.
warmer. Yep. And I can't remember. There's a great story on NPR about this, which is pretty high in the reliability thing, slightly left-hand bias.
Yep.
But they talked about the fact that the last 10 big storms, they've all escalated their fury much faster than people predicted they would. So
Sorry.
I
Yeah,
think
good reason.
that, yeah, I agree with Janice. I think it's Otis.
Otis.
Yeah, because like I kind of recall the story, but also just thinking about it, it's late in the season.
Doesn't
Alphabetically.
lead to Peter, but it is Otis. Hurricane Otis dealt a devastating blow to Mexico's coast after making landfall. Is a record-breaking Category 5 storm.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, the temperature rise in the Caribbean has to be concerning. The
Yep.
massive, I mean, the water is getting not boiling, but it's like averaging like the human body temperature, which is not good, especially when you get these storms coming over it. The heat
And they're
on the
taking
water is,
energy. Yep.
yeah, that's where it gets its energy. So
Yeah.
yeah, we've been because of what is the El Nino this time or La Nina?
I think it's El Nino. I don't know. Whatever it is.
Is usually a much less active time when it comes to hurricanes, and we haven't seen like a massive uptick in hurricanes this year because of that. But if you have that combo where you've got extremely warm water in the Caribbean in a year where you get your normal run of hurricanes,
Yep.
or even a La Nina where you get more hurricanes, then this could be just time to move to Florida.
So I am penciled in to fly over to Gibraltar and help a friend of mine sail his sailboat to Barbados. And that's a long trip.
Yeah.
We're stopping at the Canaries on the way. But one of the things that we've talked about is that you do it at that time of year because there aren't going to be any hurricanes, but you still have the trade winds blowing west that essentially just you put up your sailboat and you sail and you just go.
Yeah.
But I'm a little worried that we might see a lot of late season. Technically, I believe hurricane season is over.
Yeah.
But you can still get hurricane-like storms and spring out of nowhere
and catch that warm water, and it doesn't matter. Yeah.
I don't want to be caught in a big storm in the Atlantic in a small sailboat.
No.
It's not that small, but it's still small. It's like
I went through a tropical storm in a cruise ship.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, the waves were just immense. I mean, it was
right. You think about it.
It made the cruise ship look small.
A giant boat, like one of those cruise ships that go, yeah. All right. What's next?
Question number 7. Which company was sued by dozens of states this week for allegedly harming users' mental health? Is that YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, or Meta?
It's Meta.
I agree with AJ. It's Meta.
I mean, it is Meta because Meta is
Tuesday's one of them that's suing. That's how I know.
Yeah.
I mean, Meta's awful, but I mean, I was thinking TikTok because they are the scapegoat du jour of all social media, but
Well, but,
Meta is a big dog.
yeah, and it's red states, right?
Colorado is also one of them, which blew my mind. But yeah,
Well, and maybe it's not red states. Maybe I'm mistaken about that.
Well, I don't know if Colorado has a Republican attorney general or not. That would, join on a lawsuit.
No, as it turns out, California and New York are also involved.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah,
I
so it's
was
definitely
thinking it was kind of a mix.
But there were, there's money to be had there,
that's
and
exactly
state
it.
will join on
And
in on it.
Tennessee definitely needs
I'm
money.
sure West Virginia did because our attorney general is loves to get those big dollar awards. He's running for governor anyway, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, dozens of states sued Instagram parent Meta, alleging that its designs, such as infinite news feed and frequent notifications, has contributed to a mental health crisis in the United States. I'm not
Right.
wrong.
And the money is just so enormous.
Yeah,
We're talking about Tennessee. I just looked it up. The budget of Tennessee, yearly budget of Tennessee is $56.8 billion. Mark Zuckerberg could pick that up for 3 years.
yeah, himself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Let's see. Question number 8. Roughly how many student loan borrowers recently received inaccurate bills?
Lord.
10,000, 50,000, 200,000, or 300,000? Ever, at least for me, student loans started back this month, so
How much you have left, Dave? Tell us.
I'll be dead before that shit's taken
What?
up.
Isn't there some
That's most people. I do. I really do.
federal employee loan forgiveness thing that you can do?
There is, yeah. No, I'll be getting that. So, but
All right.
yeah, it for a lot of people, it's just it's a time thing. It takes time for those
Yep.
forbearances to go through. But
We-
yeah,
It's also, but I mean, it's interesting. It's such an issue for so many people. And it's all because of the disinformation about you need a college degree. But yeah, when my wife and I got married, our first fiscal priority was to pay off her student loans. She went to a school in Boston called Northeastern. That's just
oh
ridiculously
yeah, I got
expensive.
a lot of friends who went to Northeastern.
Yeah, I mean it's a great school.
Yeah.
But stupid crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. I say 300,000 because
300,000.
High end.
Yep.
The high end of a number. Yeah, and it makes sense.
and it's 1 out of 1,000 people
Mm.
in the United
Yeah.
States.
DOED announced that 300,000 student loan borrowers recently got monthly bills with the wrong amount, many with charges higher than they should be. They've had like it's like 3 years to prepare a bill.
I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about it
Neither.
either. I'll have to look and see how much they raked from it.
This I know, number 9.
Yeah, which automaker reached a tentative agreement with unionized workers to end a bruising strike for Jeep, Ram, or Dodge. I know this one as well. We'll give
AJ,
the
what-
audience a chance. AJ, what you think?
I'm pretty sure it's Ford.
I think AJ is right.
I think AJ's right as well.
See what the audience says.
Um,
I think we all agree exactly.
I think
Good.
Spring Hill just
16,000.
went on strike though, or on strike.
That's the
Spring Hill.
So
the big
we'll see what happens.
that's the big Chevy one, right?
Spring Hill used
General
to be
Motors.
Saturn. I have no idea what it is now.
Yeah, it's General Motors, and they
Rip
make a lot of
Saturn.
their trucks there too.
Once upon a time, they were Saturn. Like that's where
Right.
Saturns
Oh,
were
yeah,
fucking.
Saturn was-
Dude.
Yeah.
Yep.
Poor
No
Saturn.
more Saturn, but it's still a big GM plant, and
Oh.
Saturn was part of GM.
All right. Which popular series is getting a reality show spinoff?
Oh
Please,
no.
dear God, stop doing this stuff. Orange is the New Black, Squid Game, Game of Thrones, or Sex in the City. I'm gonna say it's Squid Game. I don't know.
I would agree because Orange is the New Black and Game of Thrones both are just scary to think that there's a reality show coming out of them. And Sex in the City, that goes back to that Cosmo article we were talking about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they can't do that anymore.
I mean, they have Real Housewives of
you can't be promiscuous.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
anymore.
Real Housewives took that. So I'm going to say
Yeah.
it's Squid Game.
I agree.
Sure. No idea.
What the hell? It is.
Yay.
Which are they going to kill the people after they fail?
They are going to destroy their credit.
I mean, for most people participating in those things, that's not a heavy lift.
Yep.
All right, we got
Wow.
9 out of 10 this week. So, it's an A. So
What's crazy about this, though, I was going to say, if nobody knows who Mr. Beast is, Mr. Beast does shit like that already. I just watched a fascinating thing where he gave away $1 million to, and then he had 100 people, and they just had to sort of do what he said. And in the beginning, it was just stay inside this big area.
yeah,
And then he sort of shrunk the area for a while and other stuff. But this is right. The network's copying where YouTube has already been.
yeah. I mean, eventually we're going to get Out of My Balls.
Exactly. For idiocracy.
Yeah, we're going to get The Running Man. I mean, I think that's probably where we're trending. Is that
That's where
fabulous
Squid Game's going.
prizes? Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, if MTV had just kept playing music,
I know.
what the world might be.
I miss music. As Satan, I command MTV, and knowing. So when you were young, did you get those little Bible tracts, the little booklets? They're about this big that talked about the evils of music. I mean, I lived in
No.
a rural area that had a lot, like more churches than bars. So
I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, and that's where I'm getting the names Lucifer and Beelzebub, because there was one about music, about the demon rock and roll music, and the music producers were Beelzebub and Mr. Lucifer, and
That's funny.
yeah,
It's your name. Yeah. Now, what's interesting about that is people who want to see a great video, look at Tipper Gore and what's his name from Quiet Riot?
Or not quite right.
Dee Snider.
Dee Schneider, right? Exactly. From
Twisted Sister.
Twisted
Yeah.
Sister.
We're not going to
Yeah.
take.
Yeah. But that's a hilarious video of trying to censor rock and roll.
Yeah, but as
Dee Snider and John Denver.
As the
Yep.
Dark Lord, I command MTV to bring music back, actually showing nothing but music. Maybe a little Beavis and Butthead, but that's about it. Yeah, the other reality shows, stop it.
Just stop.
I actually haven't turned on MTV in probably 15, 20 years.
I can't believe you still have it.
It's
Oh.
part of one of the packages I have for Sling. But
Interesting.
yeah, I mean it's still out there, but it's I remember the 25th anniversary of MTV. They had a party and they were celebrating, and they had Dee Snider come to that and talk about MTV. And he was like, "Yeah, MTV was so life changing for a lot of artists." And he goes, "It's really bad what happened to the channel, and that it's just become a lifestyle network." And immediately they cut him off.
Yeah.
Like, oops,
What did they think was going to happen?
Yeah. So, God bless Dee Snider for always being a truth teller. In the face of power. So
About some things, yeah.
yeah. But all right, that is the show for this week. Any parting words?
What is our country for next week?
Oh, next country. So we did an African country, we've done Central American, we've done an Asian country,
We've done Polynesian because we did Guam.
Yeah.
Let's finish all the landlocked countries first.
Let's do a landlocked country. Let's do
Mongolia.
Yes, Mongolia. I love Mongolia. That's a great country.
Wow.
So great history. So we'll be doing Mongolia in our next country profile. Hopefully we can do it next week. But I'll let you all know. Anyway, thanks for joining us this week. I really appreciate it. Have a good week, everybody.
Click subscribe,
smash
share these posts, all these things.
Smash that button. Don't just hit it. Just click it.
Smash it. All right. Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night,
Good
Gracie.
night, Gracie.